Hi, it's Veronica. This is the first video in a 4-part series about how I created this interaction. Hopefully you'll have looked through the interaction. In this part I'll show you how I created the animation at the start. So let's have a quick look at it here. So these letters that are coming in from the bottom, and they're put in the incorrect order as they come in, and then they move into the correct order. So I'll show you how to do that. So I'm back in the slide view here, and it's a very basic interaction. I basically used a couple of different motion paths to get that animation working. The first thing is that each of these letters is in its own text box. As you can see, each of these is a separate text box. So the first thing I did was, to each of these text boxes I added a motion path. If you go up to the Animations tab, you can see that this is a line motion path. It's one of the basic motion paths. So I added a line motion path to each of these, and I timed it at 0.25 seconds so that the letters come in quite quickly. And then what I had to do was two things. Firstly, align each of the letters in the timeline to come in when I wanted them to come in, basically. So they're just staggered a little bit in how they come in. And because the motion paths work a little bit different to the entrance animations, you have to trigger them to work. So basically for each of these I've added a trigger to move, and I'll show you one example. So you can see there that I've got move, the text box that's called 3D, on the motion path when the timeline starts on that object. So not on the slide, because the object actually starts at 3.25 seconds there. So move the text box on the line motion path when the timeline starts on that text box. And I've done that for every single one, so there's 5 there. So that's how I get the letters to come in. Now what I did next to get the letters to rearrange themselves is, again, for each text box I've added a second motion path, and that was a arc. It's also one of the basic ones up here, but it's an arc motion path. So basically the object basically moves in an arc shape, and you can play around with the shape however you want to. If you can see it there, you can make it a bit wider or a bit less wide, whatever works for you and however you want the animation to work. And then what you need to do is add some triggers to get the objects to move on that arc path. Now what I wanted was, I wanted the letters to come in on the line motion path, and once the last letter was in, that's when I wanted the arc motion paths to start working. So the trigger that I used in this case was also a move trigger, but the when changes. So I've got to move the text box on the arc motion path. So from this drop down you can choose the motion paths that you've got assigned to that object. So arc motion path when the timeline reaches, and I've said 5 seconds for that particular one, and I've timed each of these to move when I think that they should move. So it's a slightly different trigger to this one. The line one comes in when the timeline starts on that object, and the arc one comes when the timeline reaches a particular time on the timeline. So that's it. It's very simple to do. You just have to get those times right and get the shapes of the motion paths the way that you want them, and off you go. Thanks for watching. Bye.